meuman, masios, the 13th story. On the sixth day, they were also joyful, and they were yearning, how can the one without hands be brought here? And behold, he came and said, I am here, behold, I have come to you upon the wedding. And he said to them as before, and he kissed them and said to them, you think that I have a defect in my hands? I do not have any defect in my hands. I do not have any defect in my hands. I indeed do have power in my hands, just that I do not use the power in my hands in this world. For I need the power for a different matter. For I need the power for a different matter. And I have consensus on this from the castle which they call Schloss of Water. I find dus Wasseriken Schloss. I find dus Wasseriken Schloss. Findus Wasseriken Schloss. For once I was sitting together with some people, each one boasted in the power that he has in his hands. Nach meuman, this one boasted that he has this strength in his hands, and this one boasted that he has a certain strength in his hands. Likewise, each one boasted in the strength that he has in his hands. That is, one was boasting that he has such a power and strength in his hands that when he shoots an arrow, he can go back and draw it back to him. For he has a power like this in his hands, that although he already shot the arrow, yet he can return it to go back and draw it to him. And I asked him, what kind of arrow can you return? For there are 10 kinds of arrows, for there are 10 kinds of poison. For when one wants to shoot an arrow, one smears it with the poison. There are 10 kinds of poison, and when they soak it in this poison, it injures like so. And when they soak it in a second poison, it injures more. And so there are 10 kinds of poison, that each one is worse, i.e., harms more. And this in itself is 10 kinds of arrows. For the arrows, they are one kind. It is only because of the variety of the poisons that they smear the arrows in, which are 10 kinds as mentioned above. Because of this they are called 10 kinds of arrows. And therefore he asked him, what kind of arrow can you return? Also he asked him, if before the arrow arrives at the one it was shot, he can return it, then could. And he asked him, if before the arrow arrives at the one it was shot at, he can return it, or then could he return it even after the arrow arrived? And to this he replied, even after the arrow arrived, I can return it. But which sort of arrow could he return, etc., as mentioned above? And to this he replied, such a type of arrow he can return. I said to him, i.e., the one who was without hands, who was telling all this, said to this one who was boasting in the matter of the arrow as mentioned above, if so, you cannot heal the queen's daughter, since you cannot return and draw back but only one sort of arrow, therefore you cannot heal the queen's daughter. Another was boasting that he has such a power in his hands that whoever he takes and receives from, he gives to that person. Explanation: in his very taking and receiving he gives, for his receiving is giving, and as a result of this he is a great giver of charity. And I asked him, which kind of charity do you give? For there are 10 kinds of charity. He replied, he gives tithe. I said to him, if so, you cannot heal the queen's daughter, for you cannot at all come to her place, for you cannot enter into but one wall in the place where she is sitting, and therefore you cannot come to her, her place. One boasted that he has such a power in his hands, for there are officials in the world in charge of cities and countries, and each one needs wisdom, and he has the power in his hands that with his hands he can give them wisdom by laying hands on them. I asked him, which wisdom can you give with your hands? For there are 10 lines of wisdom, 10 types of wisdom. He replied, such and such a wisdom. I said to him, if so, you cannot heal the queen's daughter, for you cannot know her pulse, for you cannot know but one pulse, for there are 10 sorts of pulses, and you cannot know but one pulse. Sevens, you cannot give with your hands but one wisdom. One boasted that he has such a power in his hands. When there is a storm wind, he can restrain it with his hands and make weights for the wind with his hands, that the wind should have weights as is fit. I asked him, which kind of wind can you hold in your hands? For there are 10. For there are 10 kinds of winds. He replied, such and such a wind. I said to him, if so, you cannot heal the queen's daughter, if you cannot play for her but one kind of melody. For there are 10 kinds of melody, and the melody making is her healing. And you cannot play but one kind of melody. From the 10, they answered and said, what is your ability? He replied, I can do that which you cannot do, i.e., all the 9 parts mentioned above. From all the ones mentioned that you are not able to do, I can do it all. For there is a story, because one time a king desired a queen's daughter and tried schemes to capture her until the thing was attained, and he captured her. One time the king dreams that she stood over him and killed him. He awoke and the dream entered in his heart. He called all the dream interpreters, and they interpreted it according to its simple meaning, that the dream would be fulfilled according to its simple meaning, that she would kill him. And the king could not give counsel to his soul what to do with her. To kill her would pain him, to send her away this vexed him, for another man would take her, and this vexed him much, for he had made so much effort for her, and now she would come to another man's hand. And also if he sent her and she came to another man's hand, then certainly the dream could be fulfilled that she would kill him, since she was by another to hold her fast by him. He feared because of the dream, and the king did not know what to do to her. Meanwhile his love for her perished little by little because of the dream, and at each moment it perished more and more, and likewise by her the love perished each moment more, until there came to be by her a hatred of him. She fled from him. The king sent after her to seek her, and they came and told him that she was located at the castle of water, for there is a castle of water, and there are 10 walls there, one inside another, and they are all of water, and also the floor that they walk on there inside the castle is also of water, and likewise the garden with the trees and fruits, all of water. And the beauty of the castle and the novelty of this castle is not necessary to tell, for certainly it is a very wonderful novelty, for the whole castle is of water. To enter into this castle is impossible, for one would drown in the water. For one would drown in the water. Who would enter it? For one would drown in the water. Whoever would enter in it, since it is entirely of water. And the queen's daughter mentioned above, when she fled, came to that castle and was going there around the castle of water. And they told the king that she was circling there around the castle. The king and his soldiers went to capture her. When the queen's daughter saw this, she decided to run into the castle, for she wanted more to drown in water than that the king should capture her, and she be by him. And also perhaps despite this, she would survive, and she could enter into the castle of water. When the king saw this, that she was fleeing into the water, he said, if this is how it is, therefore he commanded to shoot her, and if she dies, she dies. They shot her and hit her with all the 10 types of arrows that are smeared with the 10 types of poisons. And she fled into the castle and entered into it, and she passed through the gates of the walls of water, for there are gates in those walls of water. So she passed and entered through all the 10 walls of the castle of water, until she came in the interior and fell there and remained faint. And I heal her, and I heal her. I, the one without hands, for whoever does not have in his hands all the 10 types of charities cannot enter all the 10 walls, for he would drown in the water there. And the king and his soldiers pursued after her and drowned in the water. But I can enter in all the 10 walls of water, and these walls of water are waves of the sea, which stand like a wall. The winds support the waves and lift them up, and these waves, which are the 10 walls, always stand there, but the winds hold up and carry the waves. But the winds hold up and carry the waves. And I can enter into all the 10 walls, and I can pull out from the queen's daughter, all the 10 types of arrows, and I know all the 10 types, and I know all the 10 types of pulses via the 10 fingers, 4 through each finger. From the 10 fingers, one can know a particular pulse from the 10 types of pulses, and I can heal her via all the 10 types of melody, and so I heal her. Hence I have such a power in my hands, And now I give you this in a gift. And there was a big celebration, and they were very happy. Nanach, nachman, nachman, meuman. Original notes following the story of nachman concluded. This story is very hard for me to tell, but because I began to tell it, I am forced to complete it. Nanach, nachman, meuman. Nanach, nachman.